passed away after 41 years of ruling from Damascus. His son Yazid was then placed on the throne and crowned the Khalifa over all of the Muslims. But in order for him to solidify his claim, he would need the approval of the people. This meant going back to Medina and getting an oath of allegiance from their leaders. But when he arrived in Medina, he found the same split in opinion. One group of the Sahaba and their sons approved him, and the other group rejected him. Of those who approved Yazid was Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Umar ibn Khattab, and Abdullah ibn Abbas, the son of Abbas, who was the uncle, of course, the Prophet ﷺ. Those who rejected Yazid were Abdullah ibn Zubair, the son of Zubair ibn al-Awwam, and Hussein ibn Ali, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Abdullah ibn Umar was by far the most senior of them, and he had once even been suggested as the next Khalifa when his own father was on his deathbed. But Umar ibn Khattab refused to allow anyone else in his family to rule over the Muslims. Umar said, "It is enough for the house of al-Khattab that one man be held accountable before Allah for the affairs of the Muslims." Umar was undoubtedly on another level of piety, and his son Abdullah ibn Umar was known to follow closely in the footsteps of his father. Abdullah ibn Umar argued that Yazid had the army and he was clearly in power, and anyone who had sworn an oath to him while Muawiyah was still alive was still required to keep it. And if a consensus had been reached on who the Khalifa was, it now became obligatory to follow him even if he was oppressive. I'll be discussing the issue of obeying oppressive rulers and their legitimacy a little bit later in this video. The consensus he was referring to had clearly been reached in Damascus, but over there in Medina, there were still a few people who rejected Yazid. Abdullah ibn Zubair and Hussein had a number of issues with accepting Yazid as the next Khalifa. Some of the issues had to do with the way that he was being elected. Others had to do with Yazid's qualifications as a pious and just ruler. First, there was the issue of the contract Muawiyah had signed when Hassan abdicated the throne. In that contract, Muawiyah had agreed that after he died, the choice of the next Khalifa would be given to the people. Then there was the issue of forcing the choice of the next leader down the people's throats. Yazid and his family were coming in and threatening anyone who did not support them. And while Muawiyah had been training Yazid in the arts of politics and warfare, Yazid had lived in the palaces of Damascus his entire life and was isolated from the masses. How could someone like this know justice and fairness when he had no real connection with the people? All of these factors concerned Abdullah bin Zubair and Hussein, and so they refused to pledge their allegiance to him. But the situation for Hussein was particularly complicated because he was the son of Ali. It was not long ago that Ali had fought Muawiyah at the Battle of Siffin, and many people from Banu Umayyah still blamed him for the tragedy. Some of them had even lost friends and family in the fighting, and they now harbored a resentment against Ali and his children. And a few of them began to curse him and his family, and even the rest of Banu Hashim. Among them was Marwan ibn al-Hakam, who had previously been the secretary of Uthman. He had been on Aisha's side against Ali during the Battle of the Camel, and under Muawiyah he was appointed the governor of Medina, and he ruled over Hassan and Hussein. And every Friday he would end his khutbahs by cursing Ali and his family in front of them. But he was eventually removed from his position, and Walid ibn Utbah, another member of the Banu Umayyah, came in his place. And he too had a feud with Hussein. This time a land dispute. Eventually Hussein managed to fight for his rights and get his property back. But the relationship between the two remained bitter. And now that Yazid had succeeded his father, Marwan and Utbah saw an opportunity to get rid of Hussein once and for all. While the governors of Medina had feuds with Hassan and Hussein, it seemed that Muawiyah was on cordial terms with them. Every year he would send them the money and the gifts that he had promised to them, and he never denied them any of their rights. They called Yazid to Medina to get their oath of allegiance from the people, and in particular to question Abdullah ibn Zubair and Hussein, and to kill them if they refused. One by one, they were brought into a room and asked to swear their allegiance, but each one gave a diplomatic answer, saying it was better to give their oaths in public and not behind closed doors. So this was accepted from them, and they were told to come back in the morning so that they could swear their oaths in the masjid. But Abdullah ibn Zubair and Hussein snuck out of the city and fled at night, knowing that Medina was no longer safe for them. When they entered the deserts, they then turned their horses towards the city of Mecca, a sanctuary for all people. There they would be safe under the protection of the Haram, a land that was deemed sacred by Allah, and all killing was forbidden.
ومن دخله كان آمنا.
The massacre of Karbala. The Prophet ﷺ woke up with red soil in his hand, which he was kissing. He said, Jibreel alayhi salam informed me that this one, Hussein, will be killed in the land of Iraq. And so I said to Jibreel, show me the soil of the land in which he will be killed. And this is the soil. The story of Karbala is one of the least authentically documented, yet most written about stories in all of the history of Islam. And while many early historians had attempted to preserve the details of what exactly happened, they often used narrations from known liars and fabricators, such as Muhammad ibn Umar al-Waqidi and Abu Mikhnaf al-Azdi. Abu Mikhnaf in particular wrote one of the earliest accounts of the story of Karbala in his book Maqtal Hussein. But this book was full of fabrications and exaggerations with very little trustworthy narration. But what makes the situation even more complicated is the fact that a second edition of this book was released some 400 years later. And in this second edition, written by an unknown author, the lies and the fabrications were exaggerated even more, and many new details were added, thus completely removing it from all historical accuracy. The second edition of this book is widespread today and has become the most popular source of information on Karbala that modern Sunni preachers and thinkers use unknowingly. But it is a fabrication of what actually happened. But despite all of this, there are some narrations that are more authentic than others. And from these few narrations, we can piece together a general picture of what happened, though the details still remain elusive. When Hassan left Kufa after abdicating the throne to Muawiyah, the people of Kufa would send letters to him asking him to come back and return to his place as their Khalifa. But eventually Hassan was poisoned, and now the letters were directed to Hussein. And now that Yazid was in power, the letters flooded in, calling on Hussein to return to their city. They promised him that they would support him against Yazid, as they believed he was the true successor to the caliphate. And it seems to be that after spending some time in Mecca, Hussein began to consider moving to Kufa, being persuaded by these letters. And while the popular story says that all of his friends and family warned him not to go, none of these reports are actually authentic. Rather, we have reports that Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Abbas advised him against it, while Abdullah ibn Zubayr was in favor of it. Eventually, Hussein decided to send one of his close relatives, Muslim ibn Aqil, to go to Kufa ahead of him and to see if the Kufans were truthful. There, Ibn Aqil met with the leaders of Kufa, who all pledged their allegiance to Hussein. And so Ibn Aqil then sent a message to Hussein telling him what had happened and that the people would support him when he arrived. So Hussein then gathered around 70 of his closest relatives, and they all set off towards the city of Kufa. Soon word got out that Hussein was traveling to Kufa and that many of the Kufans even had left their city to go out and to meet him along his journey. But the Kufans weren't the only ones to notice this movement. Yazid and his spies soon discovered what was taking place in Kufa, and he sent Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad to replace the governor there and execute Muslim ibn Aqil. Ubaydullah then sent an army of around 4,000 men to block Hussein in his path. It mostly consisted of soldiers from Kufa, but its leaders were all from Damascus. There, they demanded that Hussein pledge allegiance to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad directly, but Hussein refused, saying that he would travel to Yazid in Damascus and pledge his allegiance to him there directly instead. During this stalemate, it seems that the Kufans who had joined Hussein's caravan switched sides, and they went to the army of Ubaydullah. The letters they had sent to Hussein would incriminate them, so perhaps they abandoned him now, hoping to be forgiven for joining Hussein, and perhaps their lives would be spared. But eventually, this stalemate ended when the army attacked Hussein and his family. This was a caravan of civilians with women and children. They had no chance to fight back against 4,000 soldiers. But there are so many contradictory stories as to what exactly happened. One of the most famous of these stories is how Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan was the one to kill Hussein. He was a man who had fought under the command of Ali in the Battle of Siffin, but now he had betrayed Ali's son and joined the other side. And although the rest of the story is likely true, in reality Shimr most likely was not the one to deliver the final blow to Hussein. That dishonor goes to a man by the name of Sinan ibn Anas, who admitted to killing him with his own sword and spear. Sinan ibn Anas, the killer of Hussein, entered upon Hajjaj. Al-Hajjaj then asked, "Are you the one who killed Hussein?" Sinan said, "Yes." Al-Hajjaj asked, "How did you do it?" Sinan replied, "I speared him and struck him with a sword." Al-Hajjaj said, "You two will never be together in the same place in the Akhirah." This was one of the greatest tragedies the ummah had ever seen. The beloved grandson of the Prophet ﷺ now lay dead on the red soil of Iraq, just as the Prophet ﷺ had prophesied. And even though Yazid and Banu Umayyah were in power at the time, the people saw the Kufans were to blame, as they had led Hussein into a trap and killed him with their own swords. A man asked Abdullah ibn Umar about the blood of mosquitoes. Ibn Umar said, "From where are you?" The man replied, "From Iraq." Ibn Umar said, "Look at that. He's asking me about the blood of mosquitoes while they, the Iraqis, have killed the grandson of the Prophet. I have heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, they, Hassan and Hussein, are my two sweet-smelling flowers in this world." Many people tried to cover for Yazid and put all of the blame on Abdullah bin Ziyad and the people of Kufa. They say that there's no proof that Yazid ordered this and that Hussein had been willing to swear his allegiance to him. But this cannot absolve Yazid of all guilt, as these men reported to him directly. He had been the one to appoint these men, and he had set the events in motion. And in the end, he did not punish Ubaydullah bin Ziyad for what he had done. After the massacre, the army then took the survivors of the caravan and brought them to Kufa. And the head of Hussein was then cut off from his body and delivered to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad on a silver plate. But as the surviving family of Hussein had been paraded through the streets of Kufa, they saw the people wailing and screaming, tearing their garments apart, scratching their faces and striking their cheeks. According to Shia sources, when Ali ibn Hussein, also known as Zayn al-Abidin, who had survived the massacre, saw this, he rebuked them, saying, "These people are weeping over us, but who killed us other than them?" This became the tradition of some of the people of Kufa, and it even continues on with some Shia traditions even until today. There's a misconception that this event was the catalyst of the splitting of Shi'ism from the rest of the Islamic world. However, Shi'ism actually developed its own theology and traditions long after this event. So I'll be discussing more on Shi'ism and its origin when I get to the video on the Abbasid Caliphate.